This is an audio course. Thank you for listening.
You've got a great book title. I'm digging it. The Proactive Professional, How to Stop Playing Catch Up and Start Getting Ahead at Work and Life. That's an appealing promise. So maybe to get terms clear, how do you define proactive? And can you make that real for us in terms of here's what proactive looks like versus reactive?
Yes. So I define being proactive as doing the right things today to set yourself up for success tomorrow. So there are so many great examples, and I'm just going to share the one that comes top of mind because I just heard from this individual recently. So this gentleman reached out to me through LinkedIn, and he shared with me that he read the book last year and he was happily employed. He was thinking he was going to stay at his company for next few years, but the book inspired him to be proactive about his career management. And so he did things over the past few months. He updated his resume. He got on LinkedIn and he was nurturing his network. He got a professional certification. He did all of these things for really just the purpose of being proactive, just in case sort of thing. And then recently, 2020 hit and he was laid off in May. So he reached out to me. And the reason that he was contacting me, he said, Chrissy, I'm not freaking out. Instead, I feel prepared for this. I did all of these things, not knowing what the future held. But now I'm ready to launch this job search where I'm looking at my colleagues. They've been laid off and now they're scrambling, trying to update their resume and do all of these things that I've been doing because I've been ahead of the game. So that's just a perfect, beautiful example of someone being proactive in their career.
Let's talk a little bit about the why on a global scale. I couldn't help myself when we're talking about being proactive. I think of Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits, with habit 1 being be proactive, because I had to grab the number. But he says the difference between people who exercise initiative and those who don't is literally the difference between night and day. I'm not talking about a 25 to 50% difference in effectiveness. I'm talking about a 5,000+ % difference, particularly if they are smart, aware, and sensitive to others. So 5,000%, 50x. Does that sound about right to you? Is that squaring with your research and experience?
1,000%. I couldn't agree more. I believe that this is the skill set that really differentiates the average professional from the exceptional one. And I see it over and over again. I have researched this for years. I literally started to read about what it means to be proactive 15 years ago. I was working as an executive assistant, and the executive I supported at the time, he used to say, be proactive, multiple times a day. But obviously he was telling me he needed me to improve in that area. So I started this research process, and I found that, Stephen Covey has some great material on this topic, but other than that, it is quite limited what's out there. What we find typically, and what disappointed me in the process, was that business experts and leadership experts and trainers and coaches, everyone was saying, be proactive. It's especially important in the workplace. It's necessary for success. But then no one was following it up to say how you actually do that and put it in practical terms. And that's what I need. When I'm learning, I need practical, step-by-step, actionable advice. And that's really what I set out looking for.
Yeah, lay it on us. How does one be proactive? What are sort of the fundamental skills and steps?
Yes. Well, what I set out to do when I started this whole project was to create a framework. I'm a big believer in the step-by-step methodology. And so what I came up with was basically a 6-part framework. And so as I'm digging into what it means to be proactive, I realized that we tend to think about it as being one single skill, But really what it is, it's this combination of 6 different skills. So it's a blend of, I think of them really as cognitive skills and behavioral skills. So it's about how you think, and it's also about how you act. The first one is big picture understanding. So big picture understanding is really all about understanding your context, understanding the broad environment in which you're operating. In the workplace, you need to think about at the highest level, things like the economy, things that are happening in your industry, things that are happening in your professional field, within your organization, within your team. You've got to keep an eye on all of that, because that's going to help you to make smart decisions for yourself in your career, and then also just on a day-to-day basis. So an example from my own career, I started my career in banking, and that was in the late 90s all the way up until 2008, which was just an incredibly turbulent time in the US economy. And it was really important for me to keep an eye on those things happening within our industry and in the economy, and to watch that not only for my clients, so I could be proactive on their behalf, but also for my own career. And thankfully, I was able to kind of look out and make some decisions for myself that allowed me to leave the bank where I was working about 3 years before it became the largest bank failure in American history. And really fortunate to be able to take that kind of a proactive step where, unfortunately, so many of my former colleagues lost their livelihood in that process. It was a really disastrous situation, but that's the importance of the big picture understanding.
And I'm intrigued there. So how'd you pull that off? What did you know, and how did you get to know it? And how was that enough to say, let's look around elsewhere?
I think it was paying attention. And I don't want to in any way imply that I had some sort of unique knowledge. I don't think it was that. I think it was just paying attention and really thinking through the implications of some of the things we were seeing. We were seeing extremely low interest rates. We were seeing mortgage standards had been incredibly deteriorated. People were over leveraged. It was just this confluence of things happening that made me feel uncomfortable.
Gotcha. So you're like, something bad may be happening soonish is maybe the extent of it.
Yeah, it's kind of instinct and paying attention to that and just the broader environment. I think a lot of people probably did see, but they didn't take action soon enough. We're hoping for the best, and they saw those same things happening. But one of the biggest problems with people being proactive is that it's risky, right? For me to leave a secure job where I was making a lot of money and go somewhere else is a risk, and with no guarantee of a successful outcome. And a lot of people don't want to take risk. They're willing to kind of wait it out until action is forced upon them. So that's the opposite of being proactive, though. Being proactive, you're taking that intelligent risk. You're taking the information that you glean and making some intelligent choices. So then second, we have situational awareness. So situational awareness is a term that we typically hear in things like self-defense classes.
Yeah, I'm thinking about FBI agents, like count how many light bulbs there are in the room, that kind of thing.
Totally. Yes, exactly. But that's exactly what it is. It's being aware of your immediate surroundings. So big picture understanding is the high level stuff. And then situational awareness kind of narrows it down to say that you're paying close attention to the immediate things happening around you in the workplace. You're not going on autopilot, right? You can't be proactive if you're on autopilot. You've got to be engaged. You need to be not only physically present, but mentally present as well. And sometimes it's just really basic things like you see that your boss is looking stressed out and you know that he or she has a deadline coming up at 3 p.m. today. Probably not a great time to barge in and say, hey, we got to talk about my career growth opportunities, right? That's just being aware of the situation and observing and listening with your eyes and your ears and your head and your heart. Being truly engaged in what you're doing is a requirement to be proactive.
Well, yes, that's great. And then I could see all kinds of proactive opportunities already beginning to open up there. It's like, hey, can I take something off your plate? Or you're going to need to work through lunch? You want me to grab you something? And there's like, I love this person.
Right. When I was an executive assistant, I remember at first when I was working, I was supporting this leader and he was notorious for at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We used to call him Hurricane Irv because he just was a hurricane. But I finally put 2 and 2 together, situational awareness. I started to realize if he doesn't have some true break time away from his desk, away from just the mental strain of what he's doing in the middle of the day, by that 2:30, 3 o'clock time, he's going to be a hurricane. So I started to be more proactive about, I'm going to block that time on your schedule. I'm going to walk into your office and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And that was something that was additional that kind of takes me from being the average assistant to being that 5,000% improved assistant. And then the third one is future focus. So this is just about keeping one eye on what's coming up. So while you are paying attention in the moment to what's going on with your situational awareness, you're also thinking about what's coming next. So what's coming up tomorrow, next week, next month, even next quarter and next year. Thinking about not only the events and the deadlines and those types of things that you need to be managing backwards to figure out what you need to do today to be successful with those things, but also thinking about your own future and what you want to be building for yourself. So if you're keeping your eye on the future and thinking next year, I'd really like to get a promotion. Well, great. So that means that this year, there's things that you should be doing to set yourself up for that. Perhaps getting some more professional development and perhaps speaking with your manager and finding out what those opportunities might look like and letting them know what your goals are. So you're constantly thinking about the future and working backwards to say, what do I need to do now so that that future becomes a reality? The fourth one we go into is strategic foresight. So this is where I think the magic happens. It's really what connects the dots. So we start with big picture understanding, big high level. We then go to situational awareness, which is all about where we are. Future focus is all about where we're going. And strategic foresight says, well, how do I get from here to there? It connects the dots. It fills in all of those steps. So it's kind of where you're thinking about what the possibilities of the future might look like and saying, okay, well, what steps can I take to avoid problems, to leverage opportunities, overcome obstacles? It's basically filling in those gaps. Our former Secretary of State, Colin Powell, used to tell leaders to look for people who can see around corners. And that's what this is. This skill is seeing around corners and figuring out, okay, what's coming next and what can I do to prepare for that thing that's coming next? The fifth skill is intentional action. So you've gone through all this. You can see what's coming next, and you then take some action to go ahead and implement. You have more of a kind of a bias to action instead of waiting to have certainty about the future, instead of waiting for someone to direct you or instruct you. you go ahead and you do what you know needs to be done. So that's where Stephen Covey talks about taking initiative. That's what this is, taking initiative, taking that intelligent risk, even if it is, uncertain, but you go ahead and you do the right things to get yourself to that next step.
And sometimes the intelligent risk and the action taking doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think in terms of the risk, he's like, hey, I noticed this. And so I went ahead and took the liberty of doing that. Shall I order this thing I found? Or should we book this, as opposed to committing thousands of dollars to something that nobody asked for? You can invest a little bit of time identifying the thing and just asking for the approval.
Yes. And sometimes the proactive thing that you can do is opening up the conversation. I noticed this and I'm thinking that we can do this. So I don't want to ever encourage anyone to take unnecessarily risky steps in the spirit of being proactive. Sometimes it really is just opening up that conversation, having a proactive conversation. And then the final one is self-evaluation. So this is where you look at how this is all working out for you, as Dr. Phil says. How's it working out for you? And asking yourself, am I staying ahead of things, or are things catching me off guard? And when things catch you off guard, asking, okay, was there something that I missed? Should I have seen this coming? Should I have done something different to prepare for this? And in all of that, you develop these lessons and this new understanding that then goes right back into your big picture understanding. So it's all this wonderful, beautiful cycle that continues.
Could you tell us a fun story about someone who made the leap from mostly reactive to mostly proactive and saw some great things happen and through taking the 6 steps?
Yeah, I have so many fun stories. So last year, in fact, I worked with an executive assistant. She reached out to me when she had just been promoted to supporting someone in the C-suite at a global technology firm. And it was her first time supporting at that level. So she really wanted to set herself up for success and really go in there with a strategic plan for how she was going to stay 2 steps ahead of this incredibly busy and very powerful woman she was going to be supporting. And so we developed together essentially kind of an interview list, some questions, again, that proactive piece being opening a conversation, some questions for her to ask and discuss with her new partner in the first few days of working together. And these were questions like, what's your preferred communication mode? What's your communication style? How do you typically deal with stress? And how can I best support you when you're under stress? These great high-level questions about how they can build this partnership. And so the new assistant had this conversation, and the executive was just floored by this approach and loved it so much that she said, I want you to go and have this same conversation with these other executive leaders that you're also going to be working with in this role, and do this exact same thing with them. And then let's teach the other assistants to do this as well. It's a proactive approach to developing a relationship. You can apply the proactive approach to any aspect of your career: relationships, career management, task management, customer service, everything.
I love that so much. And we had Mary Abijay on the show talking about managing up and this being super powerful action that any professional can take. And in her experience, fewer than 1% do, to say, hey, what are your preferences in these ways? I love it because a lot of people, when I suggest it, they say, oh, no, that's kind of weird. And I was like, it's only weird because you haven't done it. And it's only weird because now you've been working with the person for 2 years. And you feel like maybe you should have done it earlier. And now why are we talking about this now? So it's just weird because it's different, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And so, in fact, on being on the receiving end of that, I can tell you, I just love it as a manager leader. And you're telling with that story that this senior executive loved it so much. It said, please spread this far and wide. This is fantastic. And then other senior leaders made the time to do that with delight, as opposed to, oh, why are we doing this? I'm too busy. It's all positive when you go there.
Yes, absolutely. It sets you up for success. And that's what I think is also important when you're framing the conversation, is that you're letting them know that this is about designing the partnership that's going to work for both of us, that's going to allow me to be a better support for you. And so if they understand the value of taking that time, they're much more willing to do it.
Well, so then tell us, if we're trying to get going with our proactive selves and practicing these 6 skills, are there some top best practices and worst practices we should keep in mind to maximize our progress in building the skills?
Absolutely. Yes. So I would say the best and easiest thing you can do right now, aside from anything else we've talked about, if you just only do one thing, start asking yourself with everything you do, what's next? What else? What's the next question? What's the next need? And then go ahead and answer that question or provide for that need before it is specifically asked for or requested. So I'll give you a quick example of this because I look for it everywhere I go. And once I give this example, I'm betting you will too. So customer service is a really easy place to see this. A lot of customer service people, unfortunately, they end up being very reactive. They only answer the specific question you asked. They are order takers. And when they are more proactive and do this answering the next question thing, it's very powerful and you notice it right away. So last year, I was in a hotel in Las Vegas and I woke up at 5 a.m, called down to the front desk and I said, hey, do you have a Starbucks in the lobby? And the front desk agent said, yes, we do. And I was getting ready to say, great, thanks, and hang up the phone and head downstairs in my PJs to get my coffee. And then he stopped and he said, and it doesn't open until 6. So he gave me this additional information that I didn't think to ask. It was 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just asking if you've got the Starbucks. But he gave me the information that I really needed before I even thought to ask for it myself. And thank goodness, because I didn't want to be walking down there in my PJs for it to be closed. And so when you start to see that and you go, that was really proactive. It's a super small, teeny tiny little thing, but thank goodness. And we can do that for our clients. We can do that for our managers. We can do that for our colleagues, even if they aren't asking the direct question, even if they aren't saying the direct thing they need. We know it a lot of the times. We have to own our own expertise and say, I know what it is that you aren't thinking to ask. Let me go ahead and give you the information you need, or let me go ahead and get you that thing that you aren't thinking of that you need. We can do that. And all it is, it's that simple shift of starting to think about what else, what next.
What's so great about that example is you're right. Anyone can do it. And there's situational awareness in terms of, oh, I have a feeling I know what you're driving at is that you would like to have caffeine inside of you. And I guess, boy, this is a continuum. You can go all the way the distance in terms of, however, there's one across the street, which is open right now, or you could take it even further in terms of, our staff is happy to acquire that for you and bring it up to your room. What would you prefer? And you can sort of then choose for yourself in terms of, hey, given my availability and my bandwidth and my boundaries and what's appropriate, I can draw the best line as opposed to just sort of defaulting to question answered. We are done now. Right.
It really puts you in a very powerful place of being of true service to people. This is a skill that it's trained at the Disney University. I don't know if you've heard the story that the most common question that Disney cast members at Disneyland hear is, what time is the 3:00 parade? They don't really mean that. The 3:00 parade is at 3:00, duh. But they're frazzled and they're pulled in a million directions. And they want to know what's the best place to watch the parade. What time will the parade get to me where I'm standing right now? They've been standing in the hot sun in lines for hours. So they're not thinking clearly. And Disney guest service people are taught to anticipate the true need. Don't just answer that the 3:00 parade is at 3:00. Give them what they really need and find that out. Inquire, have some proactive conversations with them and anticipate their needs. Let them know, well, right around here, if you watch from here, it passes by at 3:15, but I'd go over there by the ice cream shop. Give them what they really need. You know what they need.